So anyway, I was at my LGS the other day. It was F&M. I like to go and play Commander, and I sat at a table with some new people. I haven't really played with them before. It was a 5 pot. It was 4 lovely gentlemen who I am, unaware of. And when I sat down, they looked at me and they said, "You know what? You look a little bit like Buddy Holly." You got Weezered. You know that whole
hmm
intro. God, that was awful. I love it though.
But here we are. We're going to live with it.
Anyways, hello, lovely folks. Welcome to our lovely podcast known as Bad at Magic. And if you want to support us, I really do recommend giving this video a like, subscribing, maybe putting a comment in the YouTube comments for some algorithms. And if you want to listen to us where you can't see our gorgeous faces because you got to drive safe. We love that for you. You can also listen to us on podcast places like Spotify and I believe Apple Podcasts as well as some others that I'm
Literally
unaware of.
everywhere you can listen to a podcast, we are there.
Yes. You can just imagine our beautiful faces, our beautiful talking heads. And guess what? After that, when you're done listening to us, you can listen to some good old Weezer. Not sponsored by Weezer, although I wish we were.
Island in the Sun does go very hard when they play it live.
Oh God, Aquamarine, that movie got me into Weezer. I wasn't a Weeze head until the Aquamarine movie.
Was that
Oh
your
my God.
Weezer awakening?
Yeah, no, it was. That's not even a joke, too. That was genuinely the first time I ever heard Weezer was when I watched the Aquamarine movie and they played Island in the Sun while Aquamarine was dancing with the boy that she wanted to, fall in love with. I'll never forget it.
So, Chase, what are we talking about this week?
I wish we were talking about Weezer and Aquamarine, but no, this week we are talking about deck building with restrictions. We've kind of talked a little bit in the past about how we deck build, our preferences in deck building, but every now and then I think it's really fun to give yourself a harsh or strict challenge when you deck build. Mostly because I feel like it's a good way to test your deck building muscle. It's a muscle, I like to say, because I it's a challenge when you're faced with something that really limits your card pool, and I think that this is a really cool, fun topic for us to chat about.
Yeah, I mean, for me at least, I feel like the decks that I build with the most restrictions end up being
Mhm.
the most satisfying decks and the most fun decks to
Mhm.
play or break out at a table.
I agree.
Because frankly, you probably can end up playing them at more tables than you think, too. And it is incredibly possible to build incredibly powerful restrictive decks. And
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, you are more focused on the synergies of your deck or the theme of your deck, or just like that thing or the thing in general is much more in focus. So you
Yes.
don't get clouded by just autofilling your deck with Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, Smothering Tithe,
Mhm.
insert red staple here that I cannot think of right now. You get the idea.
Shameful.
Speaking to the red mage themselves, of
Yeah.
course, I would forget the red card that I'm thinking of. But yeah, the point being is like you just end up with a more compelling deck, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And for you budget conscious players, it ends up sometimes being a cheaper deck as well because a lot of
Yeah.
these restrictive cards are very budget friendly.
Yeah.
So that's like an extra perk.
I think when it comes to deck building with restrictions, I find myself doing that because I get bored.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh,
I
100%.
I feel like Wizards lately, and I want to say a really big shout out and kudos to Wizards for doing this. I feel like they're understanding their clientele a bit better in terms of building legendaries. Because I feel like a
Mm-hmm.
lot in the past, a lot of legendaries used to be kind of straightforward with what they are. They felt very
They
linear.
also do everything as well
Hmm.
on the card.
Hmm.
Like everyone just brings up Corbold and Shulane.
Hmm.
Like the only commanders you ever need. Kenrith as well.
Hmm.
Kenrith literally does everything you can functionally do in
Oh,
Commander, all
1000%.
on
Yeah.
all on the same card in all of the colors.
Golos before it was banned. I mean, look at that.
Yeah, I mean, what was the literally the logic for banning Golos was, can you take any deck, like any deck with
Hmm.
any amount of colors, and just say, is this deck better as a Golos deck?
Hmm. Yes.
And it probably was.
consistently all the
And
time.
building with restrictions is like the antithesis of building a Golos deck, the antithesis of building a Kenrith deck, the antithesis of building a Chulane deck.
Yeah.
Uh, because you actually have to put some weight into your decisions. Yeah,
Mhm.
a lot of times there's less training wheels, and the deck can get very unhinged very quickly. So it takes time and trial and error to dial it
Mhm.
in. But by the end of that process, when it does work and it does do the thing, you are so incredibly satisfied,
Mhm.
and you will be chasing that high for the rest of your days.
I mean, we talked about it a little bit in our episode about removal, how when you kind of tailor your cards to the theme of your deck, you get the sense of a like you accomplish something. Like when I mentioned Alibu, my Alibu Ancient Witness deck, which is an artifact heavy deck, instead of running things like Path to Exile or Swords to Plowshares, I was like, well, why not do Dispatch instead? Because it fits more with the theme, and there's still a limitation to that card, but once you kind of get past that threshold, you're like, wow, I actually accomplished something and it feels like it fits. And I don't know, the stakes feel a little bit higher.
Yeah. In like a hierarchy of restriction, I would call like sticking to a theme or like a creature type, like your
Hmm.
dragon deck or your soldiers deck. Like
Hmm.
that's like the surface level of restriction. And a lot of what
Hmm.
we're gonna talk about is more like that next step, or that two steps down the road, or even in some of the cases of the decks that I've built, steps that you just shouldn't take in the first place, and make you ask the question, well, why not? Like,
Hmm.
why not make Saskia a storm deck? Or like,
Yeah.
why not make an all secret lair deck? Or why not put Luxior in the command zone like our friend
Hmm.
Chris has? Those are the types of restrictions that we're really going to dive into, like how to tackle even approaching it in the first place, how to figure out like what is a good restriction that you can actually get yourself to stick to,
Hmm.
and just figuring out what makes you comfortable, like what's going to make you want to invest this time
Yeah.
into doing this. It's more of a time intensive process than
Hmm.
just building a dragon deck with Ur Dragon at the head, or like just
Hmm.
building a Kenrith deck with all of the voting cards in
Hmm.
the 99. um
See, I really like the concept of like I like the concept of attempting because,
mhm.
not every single deck you're gonna make is gonna work out when you deck build with a pretty harsh restriction. I lucked out with Secret Lair Sisay. I lucked out very hardcore because she's a very flexible commander.
Yeah, like
And
one of the best commanders in the on the casual side of the format, and even
yes,
has a competitive deck attached to it as well.
1,000%. Yeah. Like I got lucky with that. But there are like other decks where I know that some people have attempted and it doesn't really work out in the way they want it to. I mean,
Mhm.
you know, I really want to emphasize, like, if you can't accomplish this restriction that you have, that's not a bad thing. And like that's why I always like to create a list like on like Moxfield or like Architect first before I invest any money in it. You know, and
Yeah.
again, the whole concept of again like the deck building muscle, like this is really making you think. And if you don't enjoy the practice of deck building, this might be a little bit more difficult, I think, to you. And if you don't want to deck build, that's okay. That's why people post lists so that you can experience other people's interesting ideas and play patterns. But
Yeah,
um
if anything, what you can do is go to Moxfield and like search for that particular restriction or particular theme that you're looking for. Even like EDH Rec, um,
mhm.
EDH Rec has advanced search filters in it,
Yes, they do.
where you can find the commander that interests you, and there's this little box that says you type a card into it,
Mhm.
and it'll filter like all of the Saskia decks that have Lich's
Mhm.
Mastery in the 99. Granted, all five of the decks that you're gonna see, or I was finding, were my five previous attempts at building the
Mhm.
deck. But I was at least reminded of the things that I did previously, or someone new who's like maybe interested in that is saying like, hey, this is something that people have done, and they
Mhm.
maybe get some ideas to kind of ground them a little bit easier, and make that process a little bit less laborious.
Yeah.
It's definitely, there's definitely a deep end to jump off of with restrictions like building a Lich deck or Wild Pair or Primal Surge in particular. Like those
Mhm.
three decks can be incredibly difficult to build. Suffice to say, like it doesn't have to be as difficult as we're making it out to be. Because of what we do, our minds go to the extremes.
Yeah.
Your mind doesn't have to immediately go to the extreme of making, like, I don't know, Demir +1/+1 counters or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to do that.
I really want to point out another tool that you talked about. You talked about like advanced search on EDH Rec, and one of my favorite tools is there are times where I'm like I have a commander, but I don't really know the theme that I want to build.
Mhm.
One of my favorite things to do on EDH Rec is like I'll choose a commander, so like Atraxa. I want to build an Atraxa deck, but I don't want to do the stereotypical, like Infect or Super Friends. To me, it doesn't really spark joy. And so my favorite thing to do is you go to EDH Rec, you click the commander, and if you scroll down, it's going to say navigation by theme. You click it, and it shows you every single possible theme deck that has been created with this. The very bottom one is like vehicles, Atraxa vehicles, Atraxa Elf Tribal,
Yeah, sure.
Atraxa Voltron. One of them is Atraxa Snow. Like, there's just so many cool things. I mean, I wanted to do an Atraxa energy deck because energy technically are counters
Yeah,
that
you
you
can
get in
proliferate
Magic.
that.
You can proliferate that. And I just think that's really ridiculous and stupid and fun. Is it going to be good? I don't know. I haven't attempted it yet. But there's like
We're
the,
gonna
the
find
excitement and
out.
possibility. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I feel like we might get energy in the future. Fingers crossed. But
I still think we're gonna end up back in Kaladesh in the
I
next
think so
few
too.
years. That's my
Hmm.
opinion. And
I think so
besides the
too.
point, I think going through these different filters and stuff like that is gonna help you find value in cards that people would otherwise consider like unplayable trash.
Yes.
For a lack of a better way to word it and to not mince words.
Hmm.
A lot of very thematic cards or a lot of very restrictive cards get tossed aside because, like, I would never play that. Like,
Hmm.
there's this white epic spell from Kamigawa called Enduring Ideal, and in the early days of the format, it was like one of the most powerful decks that you could play. For those of
Hmm.
you who don't know what Enduring Ideal says, Enduring Ideal is a white sorcery for 5 and 2 white. Search your library for an enchantment card and put it into play, then shuffle your library, and it has epic. That
Hmm.
means for the rest of the game, you cannot play spells. At the beginning of each of your upkeeps, copy this spell except for this epic ability. So you don't get to cast spells for the rest of the game, but you get to tutor an enchantment into play, or every single one of your upkeeps for the rest of the game. Enchantress is an incredibly popular archetype. But playing Enduring Ideal in an Enchantress deck is a completely different ballgame. You're
Hmm.
not going to be able to do the whole Stormy Enchantress thing, but it's going to make you want to consider different enchantments in the first place. Like,
Hmm.
when I think of Enchantress, and I know you've played a lot more Enchantress than I have,
Yeah.
you try and just like play as many cheap little things as possible, and like just draw a ton of cards. Where this tells you play big haymaker enchantments.
Hmm.
And then like enchantments with abilities attached to them, so you can do other things on your turn,
Yeah.
like assemble the legion that just makes a continuous amount of soldiers, etc.
I I really want to emphasize another thing, like about giving value to like cards you otherwise wouldn't be playing. This is not my example. It's a friend of the show's, Stephanie Quad Nines, who's a lovely individual. She had one of the most interesting, like Rube Goldberg ways of playing Prosper. Um, and it was like this intense, like detailed combo that involved things like Mirror Sire and Precursor Golem. And my favorite card that she referenced, Ice Cauldron, which, if you
Oh
don't know what it does,
yeah.
I am not reading it out loud. That is a novel on a card. But she had this weird way to win the game with like those cards and Ice Cauldron. And like, if you removed any one of those pieces, like you can't win. And it was just so fun and interesting, and I loved the way that she did that, because she was like, I want to take this one particular card and find a way to win with it, and she did. It took like 6 cards all working together, but
Hmm.
she found a way to do it with a really weird card with a fun limitation that still works and is illegal in Commander. It's just old as sin, and I love it.
I'm reading Ice Cauldron right now, and my head just immediately thinks, "I'm happy for you," or "I'm sorry that happened."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
Congrats
Keanu
or I'm
thing.
sorry. I'm not reading
Yeah,
all that.
yeah. Uh, so that brings up this very like natural segue.
Yeah.
Got you.
Bing.
About build arounds in the 99.
Mhm.
Very clear, like stuff built around Ice Cauldron and like assemble the win condition around Ice
Mhm.
Cauldron.
Mm.
You don't have to go that far, but there's like a gazillion different cards like that you can go that far for.
Mhm.
But there's also just like some simple, like easy little build arounds that create incredibly unique, quirky decks.
Mhm.
I constantly toot Primal Surge's horn, where essentially it is an oops all permanence deck
Yeah.
that where you cast this 10 mana sorcery and it puts your entire deck into play, and then somehow somewhere there is a win condition to be had, whether it's like Thassa's Oracle or like Terror of the Peaks or combat
Mhm.
or something like that.
Yeah.
You can even just go a simple build around like Lurking Predators or
I love that
Luxior.
card. Yeah.
um, just like something with a very interesting interaction or a very interesting like triggered ability that you find fun,
Mhm.
and just modeling your deck out of making this one card seem like the best card in the world.
Back when I had my tribal deck, it was one of the first decks I published as a content creator. It was Commander was Morph on the Boundless. And I wanted the deck to function in a way, but my favorite win con ever. Like I could win by doing some crazy big pump up stuff with mirror entity. I didn't really want to
Mhm.
do that, but that was like a viable way to win. My favorite way to win was that one enchantment with Liliana. I believe it's was it Liliana's
Contract.
contract? Yeah,
Yeah.
Liliana's contract. That was the most fun absolutely ever. I had so much fun with Liliana's contract because Liliana's contract is a 5 mana enchantment. When it ETBs, you draw 4 cards and you lose 4 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 more demons with different names, you win the game. So you're like, Chase, how are you doing that? Well, I
You have
did
no demons in your deck.
you have no demons. I did my tribal deck was changelings and lords, and that was it. And it was
Yeah.
so much fun. And I would win by having just like a million, like a me boy changeling mirror entity, that one weird changeling that looks like a moose. Like I would have that and
Yeah.
that would be a demon and I would win the game. And I wanted to win around that card, but in a weird way that did not involve me doing mono black. And it was
Yeah,
really
or
cool.
just like getting Razakath, Copperfed, and like all of those like really rude, ridiculous 8 drops into play
Mhm.
that everyone's expecting with like a reanimator plan.
Yeah.
I think Liliana's contract is an excellent example of these like alt win condition build
Mhm.
arounds in your 99. Like there's Liliana's contract, Halo Fountain from New Capenna is another really
Yes.
good example of this as well. Like any of
Ooh.
these other cards that say like you win the game that like
Mhm.
aren't Thassa's Oracle, I think are very interesting, very compelling win conditions in the 99.
Mhm.
Um,
Originally, I'm really glad that you bring up all win cons, conjunction with Leona's contract because I one of the first times I collaboratively deck built with people was during Theros Beyond Death when Nyx Bloom Ancient was previewed. And a lot of people wanted this was this is how you can tell I'm a weird person when I try to interact with green cards. I didn't think, "Oh, I want to do like big mana X spells, get crazy monsters and stuff like that." My deck was originally I did Chulane. It was Chulane alt win cons. And so the deck was themed around alternate win cons. So I had Azor's Allocutors, I had Helix Pinnacle, and I even wanted to rule 0 in, as luck would have it, which is one of
oh
my
yeah.
favorite it's so cool, and I love that because, those cards are all 3 different cards that have to do with, like, winning the game if you have a certain amount of counters or something like
Hmm.
that, and so I wanted to do, like, big mana sinks, but also, like, counters, and eventually Chulane turned into Janara, and I wanted to do like I would just like use Nyx Bloom Ancient to sink a bunch of mana into her and have a big beefy flying commander. But like I wanted to win with like Aesor's Locutors, which I think was one of the weirder ones because it says like you put a filibuster counter on it, which by the way, I love weird named counters. And if you have five
Yeah.
or more, you win the game. But if something deals damage to you, you lose one of those filibuster counters. I just thought it was so neat. I even had that one. I think his name is Guafa. I had Guafa in there who would give bribery counters because it was
Uh-huh.
weird counters and eventually became this weird counter theme deck that just was so weird but fun, and I had a really good time with it. And it all started with me looking at this really objectively like popular card, Nyx Bloom Ancient, and I was like, how can I turn this into the weirdest thing imaginable?
Yeah. A lot of times when you're like building these quirkier alt win condition decks, you
Mhm.
end up leaning into like some good cards to make it happen.
Mhm.
But you're reinventing these good cards in such a way that your opponents may have never seen it before. Like
Mhm.
one of my favorite alt win cons is mechanized production.
Mhm.
This is blue aura enchantment. You enchant an artifact you control,
Yeah.
and at the beginning of your upkeep, you create a token that's a copy of that enchanted artifact. Then, if you
Mhm.
control 8 or more artifacts of the same name, you win the game. Most of the
Mhm.
time, you're just going to put it on like a treasure token or like a clue or
Mhm.
just like a construct token or something like that. But
Mhm.
I wanted to build a deck that won off mechanized production, machinationally producing, or like cards that you should not have 8 of. Let's put it that way. Um, So I was brewing. It was like a week ago with my buddy Sean, and I was like, I want to mechanize production a portal to Phyrexia, from the Brothers War.
Mhm.
It's this 9 mana artifact. When ETBs, each opponent sacrifices 3 creatures,
Oh,
and then in your upkeep, you get to reanimate a creature from anyone's graveyard.
I hate that.
And I was like, I want to do mechanized production with like portal to Phyrexia level
Yeah.
of artifacts. And it was just like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Because if you try hard enough, any of these alt win conditions are possible. They really
Mhm.
are. So it's really like how much do you want to commit to like optimizing the alt win con?
Yeah.
Uh, Certain ones are easier than the others. Like
Mhm.
if you're, and obviously it also gets easier the more colors you add. Like if your goal or your alt win condition is to just make a ton of tokens or like have a ton of a certain something, then
Mhm.
like having your token doublers or like stuff like that essentially is going to make things easier. But I was like, Sean, what if we just like got extra upkeeps instead of doubling the tokens?
Oh, are you talking about my favorite card ever, Paradox Haze?
I
Which
am. There's also a Sphinx that gives you an extra of each of the beginning phases.
Is that Sphinx of the Second Sun?
It is, yes.
Let's go. I know
I
exactly what
believe
you're
it's
talking about.
extra untap, extra upkeep, extra draw. Like you get
Mhm.
all of that.
I love that.
The coolest thing to me.
Mm.
So like there's the easy way to do it if if you're willing to play staples and stuff like that, but there's
Mhm.
always another way. There's always an alternate way to play the alternate win condition. It's just how deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
I do have to say I love seeing these kinds of decks come to fruition and actually achieve success though.
Hmm.
I feel a lot of joy when that happens. Like I know beating the horse beyond murderously dead, but Sisay is an example for me. And a person at my old LGS, they had, I don't know if they still have it. It's been a couple years, but I heard overheard them saying, I really need to get that new Keranos Secret Lair for my T-Pose tribal deck. I was like, "What?" Every single card has to feature someone T-posing in the art, and the commander was was Niv Mizzet Reborn because he's
Sure, yeah.
T-posing, and
Yeah,
it's
with the
5
wings.
colors.
Yeah.
So that gives you a lot to access, but it was
Yeah.
so funny because it's just like, okay, you want T-posing cards? Here's Beacon of Destiny, Bastion Inventor, Essence of the Wild, T-pose, 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 and I thought that was so funny, and I think it worked out for that person. I don't know if they still have that deck, but like committing to such a weird theme and having that pay off is just like the most chef's kiss of chef's kiss, you know?
Yeah, I built a Saskia oops all legends for better or worse deck. And by that, what I mean is every single possible card that could be legendary was a legendary for better or worse. So like
Mhm.
you can't run like Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares and stuff like that. You have to run like Urza's Ruinous Blast and like the legendary spells, the legendary enchantments, the
Yeah, Jazz Immolating Infernos,
yep.
the stuff like that, the
Like
historic pieces.
you can't run Soul Ring or like Arcane Signet and stuff like that. You have to run the Ixalan flip lands as your
Is
ramp.
is the
Um,
Celestis legendary? Because that's
yes,
a
it
mana
is.
that's
Yeah,
a
so
mana rock
you
right there for
there are
you.
several like legendary mana rocks like Celestis and Chromatic Ornery.
That's so
The
great.
the the artifact that everyone gets super hyped over in the commercial. That was a meme for like a week and a half. There's always an alternative
Mhm,
to what you're trying to do that is on theme, no matter how weird or niche your theme is it going to be as efficient?
mhm,
Probably not, but you're not building these hyper specific restrictive theme decks or hyper restrictive certain type of thing decks
mhm,
uh, with speed and optimization in mind necessarily. Like
mhm.
that is not the priority at
I think that's
all.
a byproduct. I generally feel like it's a byproduct of it, like, you know, you can slap anything together, but to have it actually work is
Yeah.
like, "Yippee!" You're not like, "I'm gonna."
That's the labor of love that you were talking about at the beginning of the show.
Yes. It really hits different to achieve that. But like
Mhm.
I go in attempting things and I've had a lot of failures to be honest, and I really want to emphasize like that. Like you can have a really cool theme and have it be a failure. I stole this idea from somebody else. I believe it was actually Zebex who had this idea originally, and I saw her posted on Twitter and I attempted to do it. I don't know if she ever did it, but I attempted to do it. I failed miserably. Was she was like, I'm going to have a commander deck where every single card features art that has this like particular shade of pink in it. And I was like, okay, well, I can't do a particular shade, but I'll do pink. So, fun fact, a lot of the times when I deck build with specific restrictions in mind that involve art, I like to do the Scryfall Tagger website. It's a really great way
There's
to
like
use
an
that.
art tag or like a artist tag even.
Yeah. And I typed in pink, and you'll get cards all right. A lot of them are old because fun fact, apparently a lot of a lot of artists who do card art don't like to use the color pink. So a lot of them are either weird shades of red that I wouldn't count, or they're just garbage cards that don't work. And it was hard and difficult. And I had a commander too. I was like, I'll just do Boros. I'll do a Chroma because no, not a Chroma, Aurelia. I was going to do Aurelia because one of her arts, it's like her in the sky and there's like sunbeams behind her and it looks pink. I was like, cool, this will be great. It's super easy because there has to be pink in Boros art. Like I feel like that would make sense in my head. No, there is not.
Mono white, yeah, because Yanni's Voss does a lot of white cards, and Yanni's
Yep.
Voss loves pinks and purples and stuff like that.
Bless them. Bless
Yeah.
them. But like, wow, was that a failure? I was like, this is so sad. And like, I'm still working on a theme deck right now where I don't know if it's going to succeed or not. And that's why I'm hesitant to do it. Is I'm kind of giving myself a crutch of having like a pretty strong commander being Morphon again. But I'm making a theme deck around my favorite horror movie, The Thing, where I'm going to have the commander obviously be the judge promo morphon because it looks kind of oogie spooky. I'm going to have 12 humans in the deck and have them represent the 12 human men in the movie and have the rest of the creatures be changelings and literally create the plot of the movie through cards. And that's going to be a little difficult. With such a lofty theme, but I'm so far have had some success with it, but because again I have kind of given myself the crutch of a 5 mana color commander like Morphon, I'm able to run like Kenrith is in my 99, a
Mhm.
1000%. He's a good card to run in the 99, but
Does he like? But then you can take this theme like a step further. Does like is Kenrith evocative of one of the characters in the movie?
Yes. Kenrith is actually my McCready. I actually put a little bit of thought into it. I
Okay.
haven't done too much thought, but Kenrith is my McCready.
Okay.
Because I thought that'd be kind of fun. I have been thinking though of limiting myself even more, and instead of making Kenrith my McCready, I was gonna make make Rick my McCready and have that universe is beyond Rick mono white card and have him be my
Mhm.
McCready. Because in my head I'm like, well, they're both bearded. So that counts. Oh, I love that theme
There's
though.
something to be said, like, with these, like, Walking Dead or Street Fighter cards or something like that. Like, you
Mhm.
can just, like, pick a commander that, like, fits and gives you all the colors, and you just never cast that commander.
I've seen people do that where they build decks that allow them to have especially with partners. I've seen people do this with partners where
Mhm.
they're like, okay, I'll choose these two partners and both of them are two different colors, but they'll build a deck and only play one of the commanders,
Yeah,
but they'll
sure.
have access to like those three or four colors. And it gives them this
Yeah.
weird sort of palette that they don't normally have access to, which I find very interesting.
I find that doing it that way is a lot more equitable than saying, like, "I'm building this other commander, except I've added a color." Like, there's a reason why a lot of the commanders are who they are and don't
Mhm.
have additional colors, uh,
Yes.
because it would adding colors inherently makes your deck more powerful in a vacuum because you have access to more cards, which
Of
means
course you do.
more powerful cards.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very, very equitable,
Mm.
nice alternative to just saying, hey, like I built an Aurelia deck, except I'm playing green in it.
Mhm.
There's a reason why Aurelia doesn't have green in her color identity because that would be broken.
Yes, it would be. I don't remember the name of the deck or the commander of the deck, which is so great. But I remember Olivia at one point had a deck where it was like two colors, but she only it was like one other I think it was like
Oh,
Orzhov.
I know exactly what deck you're talking about. It's
Yeah,
mono
yeah,
white
yeah.
Tulane. It's mono white
Yes,
Tulane.
there it is. Thank you. It was Mono White Tulane. And she was like, I'm playing my Tulane deck. And I remember playing on stream being like, oh my God, it's Tulane or whatever. And
No,
then she just kept hitting planes after planes after planes. And I'm like, Olivia, you're getting mana screwed. And she goes, no, I'm not.
yeah, this is how it is.
I
She
think
she
it's
has
fun.
like she can get like treasure to like maybe cast Tulane every once in a while, but like unless she gets help, she cannot cast it, and it is
Yeah,
a mono white deck
I love
that
that.
occasionally growth spirals in the mid game.
Mhm.
I love restrictions like that. I also love like a lot of our friends, especially the last like 6 months, have
Mhm.
built like outright rule zero decks. Like they have built
Yes.
decks with commanders that are not commanders.
Mhm.
A lot of them have built them around legendary artifacts or legendary enchantments or just cool, interesting enchantments in one of the cases that I'm thinking of. And they'll just say like, hey, well, let's use Chris's Luxior deck as an
Yeah.
example. Because I think this is a great example and it teaches a very nice lesson as well.
Mhm.
So he said, this is my Parry the Pulverizer deck. I have
Mhm.
an alternate commander in the 99 and I would love to put it in the command zone if that's okay with you guys exercising this pre-game social contract discussion to bend the rules of the game.
Mhm.
Can I play Luxior as my commander instead
It was
and
so
put Perry
good.
in my 99?
Yeah.
And like that was the first game we played in Richmond, and it was probably the most fun game that we played in Richmond
Oh, yeah.
because
It was great. It was
it was just
weird.
weird. It's something that I've never seen before.
Oh, yeah.
But it was this idea that you could make a commander out of something that is not supposed to be a commander. And it's not something that you like bring up in an untrusted group of people. People really have to trust you that you have the best intentions of the table in mind,
Of course. Yes.
which is why you don't see people just building like there's certain things that just like would never work in the command zone, like a Thassasaurical command, like
Oh my
Thassasaurical in the
god, yeah.
command zone, or
Dranith
like
Magistrate in the command
Granite
zone
Magistrate in the
or
command zone, Primal Surge in the command zone.
Ooh.
Like,
Yeah.
does there are certain things that work, but the reason why a lot of these decks become compelling, interesting, and a deck that you want to play against is because they have an incredible restriction put onto them.
Yes.
Like,
Mhm.
Jim's Ozolith deck is a great
S-
example.
It's so much fun, by the way. A blast.
It's a Demir +1/+1 counter stack, or a Demir counter stack. He just like he picked a color identity for Luxior, and like there are very, or sorry, not Luxior. He picked a color identity for the Ozolith,
Mhm.
and like he could have very easily picked like green white Ozolith counters and like just
Mhm.
gone off. He's like, no, I'm gonna pick something different. I'm gonna pick something with the bare minimum of what I
Mhm.
need to make it work. And
Yeah.
then he went for it, and it's a very cool deck. And the idea is you animate the Ozolith after all of the counters have been put onto it. The Ozolith just has those counters. Like it has all of those +1/+1 counters or shield counters, everything like that.
Mhm.
And by animating it, those counters now actively create stats for the Ozolith.
Yeah, because you can cast something like Ensoul Artifact,
Yep.
and then that artifact becomes a creature. I think Ensoul Artifact makes it a 5/5, and then you can just swing with now a one something that wasn't once a creature, it is now a creature with counters. It's just cool. I think that's a
Yeah.
really fun way to do a deck building muscle because not only now are you doing something unconventional, but you have to find a way to make it fit within the remaining rules of the game.
Hmm.
So like taking something that shouldn't be in the command zone, you put it into the command zone, and now you go, okay, I need to find a way to win through combat damage. How can I do that with a card that would otherwise not be a
In
creature?
colors that otherwise don't really do creature combat either,
Exactly.
outside of like zombie decks.
Yeah,
I think my favorite example of one of these like alternate commanders that shouldn't be a commander is Alex's Assemble the Legion deck.
I love that
Because
one.
not only is Alex playing Boros Assemble the Legion as a commander, he's got no creatures in the deck whatsoever. Everything in the deck is sorceries, instants, and enchantments and art. Like every other kind of creature of card type that just makes creatures. So like your Raise
Yeah.
the Alarm, your Call the Coppercoats. There's a like red cards that make elementals on your upkeep and sacrifice. I think it's Red of the Raging Storm
I was
is what
just
it's
about to
called.
say that one's one of the weirder ones. I like that
Hmm.
one.
It's everything like that, and then you
Mhm.
play other anthems and other supporting effects to buff up those creatures and like give them vigilance and trample and like all these other different things to make up for the fact that you have no creatures. Like you have to slowly just spew out this stream of creatures and
Mhm.
flood the board.
Yeah. I mean, we have ourselves talked about rule zero concepts and how, it's
Hmm.
more than just bending the rules when it comes to deck building. But I think this is kind of like the lighter side of that social construct that I think is just really fun to
Yeah.
explore, especially as creators. We follow the rules rather meticulously. Especially for content, we want to make an enjoyable game that I feel like is easy for people to digest, but being able to kind of like break our own rules and kind of have that like chillax sort of moment, I think it's fun to kind of test that out with ourselves and have fun with that because some of the most fun games are the games where rules don't particularly matter. Like that Luxior game we played was
Yeah.
so much fun. I think that's
I've
so
been chasing
great.
that high ever since.
Yeah. I can't sleep at night.
It got me thinking like what if I were to build a rule zero deck, like what would I do? Uh
Yes.
and I'm not normally the type of brewer who thinks like this. Like I'm very structured. Like I
Yes.
already bend the rules and the traditional conventions of building commanders, but I break the conventions of commanders you think you know how they're supposed to be built and then building them completely different ways. I don't take
Yes.
something that's not supposed to be a commander and make it a commander,
Yes.
or give two creatures partner that aren't necessarily supposed to have partner, like putting two brothers Yamazaki in the command zone together.
Yeah, I have feelings about partner and rule 0.
Hmm.
I always feel like that's a conversation that's like,
That's
you're
where intent gets really, really blurred
yep,
and
you're pushing the
really
envelope a little
pushes it.
bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
for
like
me.
we kind of said, there's a reason why these creatures didn't have extra colors in them to begin with.
Exactly. That being said, for me, for a rule 0 commander, I haven't built it yet. I'm desperate to. After having this conversation, I actually think I'm going to like put my money where my mouth is and actually brew
Yeah.
this. Um,
That's I feel like that's our motto for our deck building this year in general.
yeah,
We're finally building those decks that we've wanted to build for years.
yes. I think I'm going to do it. And bonus points, it fulfills one of my New Year's resolutions that we talked about previously.
Yeah.
My card's a green card.
Proud of you. I'm
It
interested.
it is one of my favorite cards ever. The card is Permeating Mass from Eldritch Moon. It is a rare spirit. It's a 1/3. It's 1 mana. It's green. Whenever Permeating Mass deals combat damage to a creature, that creature becomes a copy of
Oh,
Permeating
this
Mass.
card. Oh my
I
gosh. Yeah, this would
for
be
7
fun.
years, for 7 years, I've wanted to brew
Yeah.
this as a commander, and I think I know how I'm gonna do it too, is I'm going to literally just put a bunch of fight spells into this deck and just make it so that,
What's combat
every
damage?
creature. Yeah, I'm just gonna be able to, like, oh, wait, no, can I not do fight spells? Fight spells
Yeah,
don't
it's
count?
combat. The fight spells are technically non-combat
No.
damage.
No, no, that ruined my whole
What
plan.
you need to do, and hear me out.
Yes.
So you, in the same vein as a fight spell, you do a lure effect. Um,
Okay, okay. Alright, I'm
so a
here, I'm
lure
with you on this.
effect, uh, it's named after lure from way back in the day. It's an aura enchantment. It says
Mhm.
all creatures able to block enchanted creature do so.
Ooh, okay, the dream is alive, the dream is alive.
So that mean by forcing the creatures to block, you're forcing them to be dealt combat damage by permeating mass.
I just wanna do it. I just wanna do it
I
because
think this would
how
be really
funny.
fun. And then like everyone just ends up with 1/3s for the rest of time.
Yes, and, like, I wouldn't even run things where it's like, "Oh, all creatures get minus blah, blah, blah." I'm not
No,
doing that.
no.
Like, I wanna
If
make I
anything, you're
wanna
gonna make everyone's permeating masses even bigger.
I wanna do that. How
You should.
insanely funny is that? Like, I
Absolutely
don't know
should.
I don't know how I would win, but I have been wanting to do that for years. I think it'd be so fun.
You're we'll talk. I have thoughts, I have ideas.
Yes. Okay, awesome. What about you? Do you have any possible Rule Zero commanders that you were thinking of doing? And are they as cool as mine?
It's funny you mention like partners kind of bending the rules and kind of making you feel icky.
Mhm.
Because the one deck that I've wanted to do for quite a while is Safi Eric's daughter and Hans Eriksson
Yes. I would allow
as
that.
partners.
I would allow
But
that.
here's where the restriction is that you're just not like flipping Eldrazi all the time.
Mhm.
All of the big creatures are beasts, like beasts and dinosaurs, like things that Hans and Safi would conceivably be running from.
Yeah.
They're not running from Kozilek and Ulamog. They're running from like Polyraptor and like
Please tell me you're
um
gonna put the Lurgoyf in there.
oh yeah, I mean you have to. You
Yeah, legally you
absolutely
have to.
yeah.
By
Like
law, you have to.
is the Lurgoyf a great card? Not really. But that is the card that they are running from in the story. You have to do that.
S I'm gonna be extremely honest with you. If you built that deck, I would not allow you to play against me unless you were playing Khan's run. And I mean that 1,000%. If you aren't at least running the end of the 99, then I would be like, what are we doing here?
That escalates the idea of rule zero, like a
Mhm.
rule zero deck as well, like running silver border cards in your 99. But the like this is my silver bullet card, and the card that like makes Hans and Safi rule zero work.
Mhm.
Um, and this is a testament to just doing a good Scryfall advanced search, doing a lot of research on EDH track, everything like that.
Mhm.
Because I played this in my Rem Corolla Stalwart Slayer deck that I had for a hot minute.
Yeah.
This is a white enchantment from Ravnica City of Guilds called Light of Sanction. It is 1 and 2 white. It says prevent all damage that would be dealt to creatures you control by sources you control.
Okay.
So, you know, you could put like Darksteel Plate onto Hans, and that's typically what the deck does. Or, you know, you also have this idea that like The big creature enters play. You sacrifice Safi to keep Hans alive, like the story. But you can get these like very weird 7 cent enchantments from 15 years ago and build your deck around those kinds of things. Like
Yeah.
it's so hyper restrictive, but it's the type of hyper restrictive card that is like perfect for this sort of deck.
Yeah. I don't know. I find restrictions to make gameplay more rewarding for me, and I feel like that makes me sound like I'm bored with regular gameplay, but I'm not. But like it just I don't know. I
It's
find
not that
myself
you're
enjoying
bored. It's
things.
just like regular gameplay. There's always a regular game to be played. You
Yeah.
Something special, something different. That's exciting. That's
Yeah.
why like I love playing Commander the first couple weeks after like I wouldn't say the first couple of weeks after a set drop, like a month after a set drop, where people have started to get their cards from the set and they've started to build the decks that they were excited about.
Mhm.
And it's like, hey, I have a new deck. Cool, you're playing it no matter what. Let us know what to play against it. Cool,
Yeah.
I want to see this happen.
Mhm.
Hans and Safi Rule Zero deck, or
Olivia and Edgar, doing
yeah,
Olivia and Edgar from Crimson Vow, married couple, bride and groom.
not the Eminence Edgar, by the way.
No, I would scream if you did Eminence.
That is like a very good testament. Like there is a limit to what is reasonable with decks and intentions like this. Like
Mhm.
I would love to build a Baron von Count deck,
Yes.
but I would love to build a Baron von Count deck filled to the teeth, as optimized as I possibly could, just to see it happen. Like just to
Yeah.
do that cool thing incredibly tight, incredibly efficiently. That's not a deck that you can play in very many places. But in the places that you do get to play it, and the play groups that you do get to play it in, they'll think nothing of it. Like to them, that's just like that's just a cool Rakdos combo deck.
Mhm.
But when you say like I'm playing a silver bordered commander and I have done all of my due diligence to optimize it as much as possible, there's gonna be apprehension and conversations that need to be had, which is why a lot of these Rule Zero decks and these like non-traditional commander decks, um, are lighthearted in nature
Mhm.
or lean on like nickel bulk rares from Ravnica City of Guilds.
Mhm.
It's built around cards that you don't see.
Yeah.
You're making cards that are not great cards or incredibly niche cards that don't have a
Mhm.
place normally have a place.
I mean, like that's how I feel about repeated reverberation
Hmm.
in my Cadre deck, in my Chandra deck. That is a card that I've had people tell me time and time again to cut, but like it's good in this particular niche. It's
Yep.
not as good in say maybe other lists for sure, but in this one particular instance, it's a win con for me.
Yeah.
Just like how Ice Cauldron was a win con for Steph, and how there are other win cons and weird wacky things, but. I think it's just finding the joy and the value in simplicity, finding value in invaluable pieces, I
Hmm.
think is is really rewarding and exciting. And you can also, I mean, maybe this isn't a good example of it, but that green enchantment, that's everyone's favorite card for treasure hate now.
Oh, Viridian
Um
Revel.
yeah, Viridian Revel. Like, that was a card that really didn't see too much, excitement or love in the past, and then when someone discovered it, it became a well-loved piece, and I think that's just really fun. I think that's really exciting to be able to take something and do something weird and fun and unique with it.
We've said it 3 times at this point, but stuff like this takes due diligence. It takes effort. Um, but if you see someone else do it and you are compelled to do it yourself, ask that person for help.
Mhm.
Um, because I bet you that they would love to help you do that wild, ridiculous thing that you want to do and don't necessarily have the strength or the muscle to do yourself. Because at,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, people just want people to play Magic with and to play cool, unique, memorable Magic with. And they're going to do whatever it takes to make that happen.
Yeah. And I think that's a beat we can all dance to. What's with these homies dissing my deck? Why do they say it sucks? Alrighty, everybody, thank you so much for listening to Bad at Magic. If you don't know who I am, my name is Chase, also known as Mana Curves. I'm a Commander content creator streaming Paper Commander Thursdays and Sundays, 6 p.m. Eastern on my Twitch channel. Tuesdays, I do deck building at 7 p.m. Eastern. I write articles for Star City Game about Commander, and you can find me everywhere at Mana Curves.
And I'm at EK Plays Cards on all the things. I work behind the scenes with all of your favorite Commander content creators, creating the Commander content that you love. You're supporting them, you're supporting me. You can find this show on all of your favorite podcast platforms. You're also maybe here on YouTube right now, so if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons that make the dings and make the good brain chemicals go through Chase and I's head. If you are compelled to do so, do so. It really does help out, and it helps us defeat the evil algorithm overlords. And we will see you next week.